Picture this. You're living in Great Britain in the years before 1991. The glorious pre-irony years where no one imagined a bunch of stupid apps ruining the world. Computers are taking off, princes are getting married. Michael Jackson, he ain't British, but he has some pretty good music out. Your leader is so cuddly and personable, you nickname her the Iron Lady. I mean, sure, the AIDS epidemic is raging and you're at war with Argentina, but every era has its problems. Problems are bad, guys. And you know what the root problem of AIDS is? Gay people exist. The conservatives said, let's fix that. Let's fix that, boof. They passed Section 28, a law which prohibited schools and local governments from promoting homosexuality, whatever that means. So, that sucks. Not a fan. You know who else wasn't a fan? Filmmaker Derek Yarman. Inspired by Section 28, Yarman set about filming his 1991 postmodern critical darling, Edward II, adapted from the Christopher Marlowe play of the same name. Very quick rundown. Edward II isn't a great king. He has a love affair with this commoner, Gaveston, whom he keeps giving political power, and fed up, his wife Isabella leads a coup with this dude Mortimer? British names. Gaveston is killed, Edward's deposed, Ed and Izzy's son, Edward III, takes the throne, and he tosses his mom and Mortimer in jail. The film sets this Elizabethan drama in 1991 and makes it super queer. When Edward fights Gaveston's forces, he and his allies are gay rights advocates, clashing with the police. Parliament's problems with Eddie stem from him being gay more than, sucking at the whole king thing. There's a gay sex scene. A 90s music video. Tilda Swinton is there. At the end, Edward III puts on his mom's lipstick and listens to music. It takes this gay tragedy, puts in images of what was then modern Britain, and defies the detractors by showing that there will always be queer people. Critics loved it. It made the political struggles visceral. It pointed out the gay tragedy. In the years since, people realized Section 28 was pretty awful. They tried to overturn it a few times, but were blocked by some notorious assholes. Some insane morons in the US have tried their own versions, most infamously Florida's Don't Say Gay bill. Hey, f*** you guys. Section 28 was overturned in 2003. Over in the US that same year, the Supreme Court finally decided that, hey, gay people can be intimate, that's fine. Now, what does all of that have to do with the campy Broadway jukebox musical Head Over Heels? Well, strap in. The critics may have hated it, but Head Over Heels is potentially the most important piece of queer art that I have ever seen. 1. Head Over Heels, the musical, the show. Head Over Heels is a jukebox musical that uses the music of the Go-Go's to tell the Countess of Pembroke Arcadia by Sir Philip Sidney. It originally opened at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival with a book by Jeff Whitty. After some events, Whitty's book was adapted by James Magruder, and that's the show that I saw on Broadway. What happens in the show? In ye old ancient times, Arcadia is a nation governed by the beats, i.e. traditionalism. The opening number had this really cool table-pounding dance section. We've got the king, the queen, and 2 princesses. Pamela, gorgeous and annoyed with her suitors who she doesn't like, and Philoclea, hopeless, romantic, in love with sheep boy Musidorus. The snake fiend Oracle warns that the beat is going to die if 4 things happen. Run! Philoclea sleeps with a dude the king doesn't like. 2. Pamela will get married without a husband. 3. He and his wife will do an adultery. And 4, he'll give the throne to a better king. So the king decides, of course, to take his family on a road trip to avoid all of that nonsense. Mousy proposes, gets the no from the king, follows and starts cross-dressing as Cleophila. Very original, very cute. On the road, Pamela's servant Mopsa is all like, "You're a lesbian." That's relatable content. And Pamela is all, "What? You're fired." Insert angst. Good old Mousy is accidentally seducing the king, queen, and the daughter. Mopsa comes back. Pamela and Mopsa confess their feelings for each other. Mousy and Philoclea do too. Yay, love! 2 prophecies fulfilled. King and Queen both try to seduce Cleo. They end up in a dark cave and sleep with each other in a convoluted way that means that adultery has been committed with each other. That's another prophecy done. One left. Musie's identity is revealed to all. The king, suspecting he's his successor, kills him. Success! Yay, murder! After Philoclea does a sad song, the king resigns, makes his wife the king, and bam! That's all the prophecies fulfilled. The beat is dead. Surprise, surprise, Musie comes back to life because we're doing progress. Musie and Phila decide to get married. Pamela and Mops are like, we're lesbians, and everyone's all like, what's lesbians? But yay, love! Then the snake oracle person arrives and turns out to be Mops's non-binary mom. They're accepted back into the kingdom they were previously exiled from, and Musie's all like, I liked being Cleo. I think I might be gender fluid. The queen is all like, my husband, don't disappear. You're like, kind of almost cool now. They go back to the capital. Yay! So imagine all of that. And the dialogue is in Ye Odin verse, and the songs are all Go-Go's hits. Fun, bright colors, costume moments that were delightfully odd, not much attempt at all at making the songs work, and some very fun dance numbers. It was not well received. I saw the show on January 6, 2019. Closing night. I was in New York for a study away semester over the winter, a brief and heavily packed trip with other students in my college's theater department. I was taking an honors course in theatrical criticism. I read a lot of critiques of shows, lots of theories of criticism. Of all the plays we were going to see, this was the one I was looking forward to the least. The few reviews I looked at beforehand were not great. One of the pre-trip focuses my class took was looking at the transphobic New York Times review. It's a time. The department's alumni that we met in New York City before we saw the show talked about how much they did not like it and how pretty much everyone they knew also did not like it. Doesn't give you great vibes going into a show. I knew it was going to be camp, whether that was on purpose or not, I didn't know at that point. And I knew that it was starring Miss Peppermint, famously a contestant of RuPaul's Drag Race Season 9. I had not yet watched Drag Race at that point, and all I knew of it was from clips from Untucked. You know, people being very loud and very rude to each other all the time. So I was expecting to be quite annoyed. But, well, two. Head Over Heels, the musical, The Breakdown. To this day, that night in the packed theater on the closing night of the campy, high-energy musical is the single most gut-wrenching experience I have ever had consuming a piece of art. Sure, you know, I'm thinking of ending things, Everything Everywhere All at Once, Call Me By Your Name, and Barbie have all made me tear up, amongst other things, but Head Over Heels made me a literal sobbing mess. My face was gross. From the moment we left the theater until we got back to the hostel, I could hardly talk. If you're thinking that the show vaguely sounded like a fairy tale, you'd be right. You know, it's Disney-esque, just a little bit more grown up. Happy endings. I was already crying on the lead up to the final moments, but when the Oracle was revealed to be non-binary and their ex-husband immediately proudly sang, I'm mad about them, well, maybe it was a little on the nose, but I'm a cis man and that broke me. I legitimately started just bawling. My face, it was a mess. Everyone around me was happy and cheering. When Pamela and Mopsa revealed their relationship, there wasn't any homophobic turmoil. Their parents accepted it full on. You know, this was a story where LGBT plus people weren't the villains. They weren't victims. They weren't tragic. We didn't die. This was a story where we got happy endings. Immediately after the show, it clicked for me. And until that point, I'd never seen someone like me get their happy ending, not in a fairy tale. Here was a happily ever after, and even though you grow up and realize that life is always more complicated than true love, than happily ever after, like children watching a Disney movie, seeing the idea for the first time that it can happen for you, theoretically, in some perfect world, you know, it gives you this overwhelming hope. I was 17 when gay marriage passed in the United States. I lived in a very small town in Kentucky. I could finally get married, and I wanted to. Love has always been my deepest desire. I'm a hopeless romantic. I yearn. But my depression and a degree of internalized homophobia said I wasn't going to get that chance. When I saw this show, I was 20. And I'd never kissed anyone yet. I'd never had a chance at love. And the show showed me that happiness is possible. When I watched Head Over Heels, I was out to the majority of people in my life and had been for a while, but I still wasn't out at that point to my parents. Coming out had always been terrifying for me, you know. Despite the era of it gets better, which is true, it does, my media exposure to LGBT plus people outside of caricature had always been the gay tragedy. Flowers for Bobby was the first gay movie I watched. Angels in America, Rent, AIDS, death, bullying. In middle school, I browsed Yahoo News for stories about gay marriage, and I wouldn't really read the articles. I would go straight to the comments. I wanted to get married. I wanted happily ever after. And I was obsessed with the people in those articles who would comment saying that all gay people were disgusting groomers trying to turn children to their disease. I thought maybe I was abused. I wasn't. It's Anita Bryant type bigotry. The right never learns any new material. All those things combined into a messy, scribbled sticker that stuck to me. It was like I was a masochist, but the pleasure center of my brain, broke, and I kept re-clicking and hurting myself for no reason. There was no pleasure. One of the first plays I saw as a freshman theater major was a production of Dog Sees God, which is a hilarious script by the dude who wrote Easy A, and it was a very good production, one of the best ones we did while I was there. Major spoiler alert here, but in it, homophobia leads to suicide. Can't you see? Homophobia is bad. There's a power in those sorts of stories, of course. They should be told. We should be telling all of the stories about all of the things. I am in love with art. It is my truest love, and it always has been and always will be. But Head Over Heels was the first time a major piece of fiction gave me a happy ending. At least that I'd seen up until then. You know, I was terrified of running into the gay tragedy over and over again, of hurting myself by falling into this depression of depictions that become destiny. I was scared of my parents finding out my secret. Reading shonen ai manga was really the one thing that generally had a positive, safe vibe about it. Fluffy little nonsenses. LGBT plus people deserve to see themselves and to be seen in more than just good dramatic tragedies. Seeing is transformative. Earlier this year, I watched Red, White, and Royal Blue. I loved that film. I loved that it was popular. I loved that it was loved. I want more. One thing that comes up all the time when talking about representation is the need for good representation. What people mean when they say that is always up in the air. You know, sometimes it means that the roles are brief or the queerness nearly entirely hidden. You know, see a lot of the Disney live action movies. Good here would mean more than a moment easily clipped away for foreign censors. Sometimes that kind of comment comes from moralizers who can't handle art and want every queer person to be a precious child handled with pure delicacy, having no faults and experience few problems. Good here means a non-character who experiences a non-plot. Sometimes it's anti-didactism. Sometimes it's anti-stereotype. The most common meaning that I found recently, at least, is meaning that the text should be objectively good. So, let's talk about quality. 3. Head Over Heels, the musical, the flop. There is no such thing as objectively good art. Sorry. More importantly than that, there has long been a push for quote-unquote worthy art. Everything must be the best, or it feels like a waste of time. Insert the chef from the film The Menu choosing to kill an actor because he was in a film the chef thought was bad. The result is a lessening of art, both the amount of it and the joy of it. Because we consume art as content increasingly more, and we only want to have the best meals, we don't allow things to be mediocre. Not that that's an objective quality, nothing is objectively mediocre, but we don't really want to allow things to be silly, to be an attempt. Mid-budget rom-coms with dumb plots used to be a true force in this country. Thankfully, they're slowly coming back. Everything either has to be amazing, winning Best Picture, or it's a time-wasting endeavor to even exist. Things aren't allowed to be boring. They're not allowed to be outside of our personal taste, and so on and so forth. I actually have a theory that part of the reason for the proliferation of AI art is the fear of being bad at art and the amount of internet points you get for dunking on someone's work, no matter how far along in their artistic journey that they are. Nothing quite gets clicks like hate, you know? That drives a lot of a very specific type of criticism, where you go all in and you destroy a piece because that generates clicks. And sometimes a good dig can be its own art, and sometimes it's just cruelty for cruelty's sake. Our study array group from my college toured NYPAL, the New York Performing Arts Library, and we talked to one of the people in charge of the video archives. NYPAL records select Broadway and off-Broadway shows and stores these videos for archival and research purposes. We asked if they had recorded Head Over Heels. They had not. I don't recall if it was connected to Head Over Heels or if it was a different part of the conversation, but he did explain at one point that it's hard to get people to sign off on the contracts and waivers needed for licensing reasons to be able to get the archival footage, and this is made even harder when you're dealing with jukebox musicals and multiple songwriters, where there can be plenty of songwriters that need to be asked and sign off. In case you're wondering, yes, SpongeBob the Musical is in the archives. He said hard choices have to be made because they have limited funding, and they try to record things that they believe are historically or culturally significant. Sometimes they'll record a show because of a significant cast change, for instance. On that trip, we saw a revival of My Fair Lady. The lead actress was going to change, so they were going to get a second recording of this specific revival because of this historic and significant lead cast change for a stupid sexist musical. Head Over Heels is the first Broadway show to have a role originated by a trans actress. But alas, that's not culturally or historically significant. I've tried my best to assume that he simply didn't want to talk about how they failed to get the rights, but after reading an account by Jeff Whitty, it seems like the Go-Go's and the label were heavily involved in this entire process. Would sync rights really have been that hard to come by with the literal artists working with the show? They have the rights to their catalog. When we talked about the NYPAL experience as a class later, we tried to rationalize it. We tried to understand how so many people hated it and how they had to be clearly right. Obviously, their taste was objective. Ours was subjective. Many of us are queer or close to queer people, and we were young and kind of used to camp, I guess. Maybe it was just a niche show that all 30 of us loved, the same group that had major, passionate disagreements about Frozen. The pants, did they matter? In my opinion, which I know is not fact, most revivals are put out for a niche audience of old people trying to pretend that their boring plots and characters are still the height of culture, and for the young people suckered into believing that cultural capital and high art and other bullshit are real things that exist. This is in the canon, so it's objectively good, so we must do it over and over. That's bullshit. But no one calls the shows made for those people the revivals niche. You want to watch a revival of a famously sexist musical pretending to be feminist now because they sort of changed the blocking at the end? Well, we'll make sure to get multiple versions of that show for the archives. Maybe Head Over Heels was niche. It was camp, and campy things like Cher, Gaga, ridiculous fashion shows, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and, musical theater. All of those are niche, unsuccessful, and important. They haven't had any cultural impact. The thought I had at the moment was that maybe queer stories are acclaimed when we suffer and die, but when we're happy and over the top, we're niche. We're poppy nonsense. No one likes happiness. Our existence constitutes us as our own genre. The show also suffered and died. It didn't last long on Broadway. The Tonys shut it out. It didn't make much money. You could call it a flop. Speaking real quick of queer art, I have a poetry collection that's out on Amazon now. It's called Butterfly Snuff. You can get it in paperback, hardback, and ebook. The paperback and hardback versions have this extra poem on the back cover that is not in the ebook version. You can also like, comment, subscribe, do whatever you want. Okay, thanks. 4. Head Over Heels, the musical, the tragedy. I wrote a version of this script a couple of years ago before I started actually making anything. I repurposed that script for this. Whilst I was doing that, I googled the plot to refresh myself when writing the brief summary section. In doing so, I came across an open letter posted online by Jeff Whitty, the writer of the original book. This is a kind of tricky thing to talk about. I wasn't able to find any independent reporting confirming or denying details of his story. The allegations put forward are significant and heartbreaking. If these heavy hitters behaved as he claims, then disturbing misconduct happened in the transformation from the show's Organ Shakes production to the Broadway run. I am a musical theater writer. I've written the book for 3 musicals. I did the lyrics and music for 4. I want to write more. This is the world in which I live. Theater is my everything. And Head Over Heels is an insanely important show for me, for my development and my relationship with myself and my place in the world. Yet there's this potential that this thing I love was the result of intense pain. I want to make clear that Jeff Whitty's allegations are allegations. I don't know how true they are, and I would like for some further reporting to come out and update us on the story. If there are abusive people in the musical theater industry, and they do exist, we need to clean house. And if these specific people are exonerated, we need to know that too, so we don't accidentally burn them. One thing I know for sure is that Whitty is right in saying that art is insanely personal. People online love to shout at creative types that we need a thick skin. They don't mean that as advice to help us get through the world. That would actually be something. No, it's meant to say, "We will continue being as cruel to you, and what you make is we want. If that ever hurts you, that's your fault. We can never be blamed. You must always be game. You may not complain." There is a sincere difference between criticism and cruelty. Sometimes you'll find when people try to make their taste objective online that when you like something that they find stupid, they will start insulting you and your taste and your ability to enjoy art or even think. And the opposite happens too when you hate something that they love. We make our taste into some moral, objective thing just because we want more internet points for stabbing each other. Again, I have this theory that the actual stuff doesn't matter. It's all just about having something to fight, to hurt people with. And I think that's insane. There is a sincere difference between criticism and cruelty. When I put on my first musical at my college, it wasn't merely critiqued, it was torn apart. I didn't really get specifics about it, but I heard, "Why did we pay for this?" There were people who made fun of me for it, teased me about the ways they or other people hated it. Hey, you put on a thing people didn't like, isn't that funny? Certain members of the production revealed that they had their own issues and eye rolls with the show, things that they never shared with me while we were creating something together, putting ourselves out there, ignoring the ways in which we could have made a better show. Professors, too, weren't necessarily kind about it. I went out of my way to not talk to anyone about the show. It sincerely hurt. It became a bad memory. I wasn't the only one that the department was cruel to that semester. There was something in the water. Cruelty is easy to coach yourself in. Call it an opinion and then laugh at how it hurts someone. You do it in your acting classes. The point is merely taking someone down. Sharing your art is terrifying. Even when you're proud and confident, when you're open to criticism, the ways in which it and you are treated can be horrid. I think we can all do with a little less takedowns and a little more grace. When I read new work, I focus on the things that I love. Someone has to, In one of the courses that I took, I would give very specific feedback about the things that I really enjoyed from a performance. I had an actor friend who would do this very specific thing with the muscles beside his eyes. And we were in a close-up classroom, so I could see that here. And he would also do all of these interesting things with his hands, and I wanted to make sure he knew that I was seeing the work that he was putting in, and it was good work. Because a lot of times in these classes, you're not told when you're doing good. Or if you are, you're not told the specifics, We tell you how you're doing bad, how you can improve, but we don't tell you where to focus the self-love, focus the energies, focus the I am good at this thing. You don't grow just from pruning. 5. Head Over Heels, the musical, the impact. If there was a happily ever after Disney movie with a lesbian princess or a gay prince, I think I would have spent less years hating myself. I'm certain of that, actually. The thing about ridiculous optimism, the sort you see in movies where everything is wrapped up in a tight little bow, is that it gets you to imagine what your life would be like in a perfect world. If you never get to see yourself or someone like you in these imaginings, in these perfect worlds, if you're not represented, then they don't include you. Something about you is other and needs to be fixed. If you were there, it wouldn't be perfect. The animated short In a Heartbeat went viral when it was posted online. People wept when they saw it. It's a short film about a boy who has a crush on another boy and tries to keep it a secret, but his heart literally beats out of his chest and betrays him. But the two boys connect and their hearts embrace. It's sweet and it's silly, it's optimistic. If it's so happy, why were people crying? Hope, when placed in the home of despair or loneliness, makes us emotional. Watching the short made a lot of adults, my age and older, yearn for having had something similar for when they were children. It filled them with happiness. It gave us a sort of peace that, the people younger than us do have more of this hope, that they can have this ridiculous dream of happily ever after that everyone else got to dream about. Head Over Heels inspired me to make my own children's musical, a TYA show, one that features a gay love story. Three Wolves Howling went up at my college in fall 2019. That show has changed a lot since then, for the better, I would say, but working on and showing children a happily ever after that I was denied seeing for so long myself, something about that felt right, even if people didn't love it. After it closed, I immediately came out to everyone I wasn't already out to. I had hope. And hope is a beautiful gift to give. So thank you. And make the art. Even if people think it's bad. You might just change someone's life. This is not how things should happen. It is not how things will be. You dare defy me. She'd be a great queen. He'd be a fool's king. Look how he's dancing, just like a madman. That's what you wanted. He will be a great man. You'll marry Wisty. I'll marry Ezra. That flies in the face of the law. If that's love, then that's good reason to change things. When I'm king, you would commit treason. Perhaps we should leave this be. No, you should not defy my orders. You are not listening to commands by your ruler. You were just mad. It gets better when you have some sleep. And maybe if you have something to lead. Oh, dear Lord, a small suggestion. Let him have this kindness, and he might trust you. And as advisor, I will still be queen. You make a good point, I always do. Prince Keon, my final ruling, I say very well. I'm glad he's honest with me. It makes me happy. He is my true love. It's him I'm married on. And that's how things should happen. So that's how it should be. So it shall be. And 4, visceral. 3, he was in a film that the chef 2 capital run